all for being on. Your punctuality is much appreciated. There are 58 of you on this call. As you know from the emails, the point of this webinar is to answer some of your questions. So we're going to take a couple minutes just to run through some of the most popular questions that we've received, and then open it up to some of your questions. In the event that we do not get to your individual question, please reach out to either Nicole or me. On subsequent slides, you'll see our email address, there's our phone number. We recognize as parents as well as college counselors that this is a very, very, very confusing time. There's a lot going on, there are a lot of changes, and we're going to do the best we can to answer your questions. But we do understand that children, I always say to my students, that children are not pencils. They're all different, and we welcome the opportunity to speak about your particular child and perhaps help them navigate this really uncertain time. Now that I'm beginning, I just want to start out and introduce Nicole and me, tell you a little about who we are, a little bit about our company and why we might know a little bit about college admissions. Starting with Nicole. Nicole is my associate. She's wonderful. She has been doing college admissions for about 10 years, both undergraduate and graduate. She's a graduate of the University of Maryland, has a master's degree in, I want to say brain sciences, brain-based teaching and learning, which is pretty impressive. And she knows a lot about science. If I had to classify Nicole, I would say, well, as far as her particular areas of expertise, she's great with a range of students, but she has particular areas of expertise, including homeschooling. So she might not look like it, given how relaxed and beautiful she is. She has 4 children that she homeschooled. 2 who are now in college. One just graduated from Swarthmore, and one who's at Wellesley. And then she has 2 younger ones being homeschooled. And she seems to do really well with the 2 E's. So students who are exceptionally gifted, and she gives a lot of presentations to the Florida Gifted Association, as well as students who have learning differences. Those are wonderful areas. If you have any particular questions about those, Nicole is your woman. My name is Mandee Heller Adler. I've been doing college counseling for about 16 years. I'm from, anyone on the call from South Florida, I'm from South Florida. I eventually went to the University of Pennsylvania, where I graduated from the Wharton School and also the College of Arts and Sciences. Eventually got a master's degree, an MBA from Harvard Business School, worked in finance, and then I actually started International College Counselors 16 years ago. So International College Counselors, in a nutshell, has 9 offices throughout the United States. We work with students in 13 countries, and we work with students anything pertaining to college admissions. So you'll see on your screen a whole list, but I say anything where your child does not get a grade, we will work with them on and talk to them about, and our job really is to support the individual needs of students and their families throughout high school. And lo and behold, that works out very well as far as leading into college, because maximizing your child's high school education is really the path to get into the college of their choice. So with that in mind, I will turn it over to Nicole, who will get right to our agenda. Thank you for being on.
And I just want to also reiterate my thanks to you all for joining this call. It really is uncertain times for all of us as parents, as teachers, as counselors, and as people who work with students. And again, as Mandee indicated, a lot of what we're going to share is based on what we know today. All of this information, again, is subject to change. I welcome questions in the Q&A or in the chat section, and if we're not able to get to your questions during the presentation, we're going to leave time at the end of the presentation for more questions. And again, we're always available by email if you'd like to talk to us. Today we're going to talk about 3 important changes, 3 categories of changes. What are the changes in the testing world? That's going to include changes in the dates, the format, changes in the college admissions process. And we'll talk a little bit about each of that component, the academic component, the extracurricular component, what college admission officers are looking for in light of what's happening in the world. And then the third piece of our presentation today is going to address student life. What is happening now with your individual student now that they are home? Some of the differences that we can expect between school at home versus when they were going to their brick and mortar school. Again, please type your questions away and we'll be happy to answer all of them. Okay. All right. The first change that we're going to talk about are what's happening in the test world. And we decided to go ahead and answer these first because with our own clients, these were the questions that were coming up. These were the first calls that we fielded. What is going to happen with the SAT and the ACT? With respect to the ACT, many of you all know, if you've had either your children or your students taking the test or been paying attention, the April test was canceled and students were moved to the June test for the ACT. It's really important that you remember though that your child is not automatically rescheduled. So what the ACT has done is sent an email to each student who was registered for the April exam and given them the option to register for the June exam. You may register for the June exam or you may register for a later date exam. But I do think it's really very important you're not automatically rescheduled. This is something that you or your child will have to take care of. For the SAT, the May exam was just completely canceled. As counselors, we've seen changes, none like this before, but we've seen changes before. And our recommendation is just to go ahead and reschedule as soon as possible. A couple things are happening. One, there are going to be more students taking the June and or later test dates. And also some of the public schools or even private schools where the test sites, there may be a limited number, there may be fewer students who are, fewer buildings that are now available just because it's now in the summer and schools typically are closed in the summer. The next thing with respect to AP exams. AP exams are always held in May. And so we knew that there was going to be some sort of change with the AP exams. As you may have heard, the AP exams have changed their format completely. So now they are going to be administered online at home. The format has been reduced now from a much longer test to a 45-minute test. In addition, the AP exam, which used to include a multiple choice component, is only now going to be an essay-based exam. So that's going to be a fairly significant change for students who've taken AP exams before. The IB and the Cambridge exams, well, like the other exams that were held during May, have been canceled across the board and will not likely to be administered at all this year. With respect to the SAT subject test, many of you on the call may not be even aware of what these subject tests, but MIT is one of the more prominent schools who more recently decided that for this application period, subject test would no longer be required. And that's a really important consideration, because when a school like MIT makes a decision, many other colleges will soon follow. We're keeping track, or attempting to keep track, of the changes that are happening in the testing world. But again, these are some of the things that we know to be true today. With respect to college use of exams and admissions, I get calls from my clients. What's going to happen, particularly with the juniors, high school juniors? If I'm not able to take my SAT or ACT, what's going to happen? The question is, honestly, We don't know for sure because colleges themselves are still in the decision-making process, but our thought based on experience from challenges in years past is that they're going to be taking a fairly close look at your high school transcript. Some colleges may be deciding to go test optional for the years. There are about 100 colleges right now who have decided to go test optional. And I guess lastly, we want to just talk about summer programs. What's going to happen? The changing in the test dates may impact summer programs. And again, when we get to that point of about extracurricular activities, again, understand that this is quite a fluid and dynamic process. Summer programs, as far as we know right now, are still scheduled. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks or so, colleges and other entities who are running summer programs will have a better idea of what their scheduling looks like. So, again, if you have any questions, we'll hope to answer them. Okay.
Wonderful. All right, thank you so much. I see a couple questions coming in, and we will try to answer those as well as many others. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about some big picture buckets that are really hard to answer. However, what I want to say about these questions and similar questions, how will colleges view my transcript, right? How will colleges view my extracurriculars? I want to start off by saying that we are all in the same boat. All of us with children, they're all home. Colleges know this. Colleges are closed. So if you have changes to your transcript because your school has gone to pass-fail, or because your school is now focusing on core classes, or because they're extending the school into the summer, colleges are fully aware of this. I do not believe that they're going to try to penalize your child. So if your school does have grades and all of a sudden it switches to pass-fail, I honestly don't think a college is going to be like, oh my God, what is this? Why did this happen? Now we won't accept this child. Honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. If the college is going to do that, I will firmly say you don't want to go to that college because they're not that smart. But colleges themselves are switching to pass-fail and changing their systems. I read an amazing op-ed by a professor at Columbia who said she's just giving everyone A's. I thought that was really nice. Things are changing and colleges are well aware of that. So I wouldn't worry so much about the transcript. And the same thing applies to extracurriculars, right? It's not like your child is the only one who hasn't gone rowing this month, or isn't, signing up for science fair, or isn't able to play in their year-end concert. I know that stinks, and because your child probably likes to row and likes science fair and likes to be in their concert. However, colleges are not going to be shocked that the end of the year is not going to have as many of those activities. All of our students all over the world, it's amazing, are all, canceling their end of year activities. So please do not worry. Obviously, if your child can find time to continue with their extracurriculars while at home, that's, ideal. But colleges are not going to be expecting a robust curriculum from second semester. So please, we've spoken to enough admissions officers, and Nicole and I have read enough articles that you can feel very comfortable about that. And I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to talk about student life and just what life is like now that we are at home.
This is, I would say, in the scope of things, probably the most important part of this process. What does your day look like now that your children are at home? And so when we talk about differences in technology, I'm going to first start and mention NACAC, which is an organization, an industry group, which is the industry group for college counselors, has a website where they have listed, at least as of this morning, last time I checked, it's a list of about 700 high schools in the country and a similar number of colleges, where they've created a database to let families know which colleges have now have extended their dates for when they are expected to go back to school. For colleges, there are some changes. But first, let me just talk a little bit about this. In each home, it's going to look different. Some high schools have, in the state of Georgia, for example, have decided that they're not going to, they're going to end the school year right now, that the kids are not coming back. Here where I am in the state of Florida, some of the public school students are on spring break. They will be using online delivery beginning next week. Some of the other schools have already started. So this is a change both for the students and for the teachers. So that means that there is going to be a different set of accountability. You would have your classroom teacher there who might be able to guide your student. And so now, in some ways, the parent is acting as the teacher. There are also going to be changes in what happens with extracurricular involvement at home. Students have asked me, well, now that I'm not able to participate in band or my robotics club or my sports activity, what am I now supposed to do with this time? Well, again, as Mandee has indicated, this is a unique period in time, and so colleges are aware. My first piece of advice is to use this time, not to necessarily fill it up, but to use this time to spend a little bit more time with family, to use this time for your students if there is something that your child has always wanted to do, but they've not had a chance to do it. In our house, we've spent a little bit more time with gardening. I know in Mandee's house, they've spent a little bit more time with playing the piano. Whatever the case may be, this is a really good time. We often talk about students not having a time to truly develop their passion because it's really filled with things they think should go onto the resume. Now, this is a good opportunity for things that they actually want to do. So don't think that you have to create a replacement activity. That being said, for students who are interested in doing something more than they might have, or they just like filling up their time, now is a great time to do a project, or maybe it's independent research, or I know I have a student who's working with elections, and another student who's teaching themselves some statistical analysis. There are lots of opportunities for your child to engage in a way at home. And it's going to look very different than when they were in school. But I will say to you, colleges are going to view it as equally valuable. Okay. And ICC has put together a list of and again, the key word here is suggestions. There is no college that has this is uncharted territory for you, for your student, for the colleges. However, we've put together a few things that we think are important to do. The most important thing is I've shared with students is to stay healthy. Teenagers typically are not getting enough sleep. Now is a great time for kids to make sure that they're getting their 8 or their 10 hours worth of sleep. As much as possible, continue to stay active and exercise. All of these things are ultimately helpful to your ability to do well academically, but beyond, but even more important to do well academically is feeling good and keeping your mood up. If there is a particular craft that you or your child have been interested in, maybe it's an opportunity for you to have a family project, a genealogy project. Maybe it's an opportunity to spend some time with grandparents virtually, that some of these things that we just often don't seem to have enough time to do. Now is a great time to do that. Summer programs, again, we're not sure of what the dates, if there are going to be changes in the dates, but we know that most of these summer programs have essays. So this would be a great time to explore different summer programs and then write these essays if you have a little bit of time, because you're not in school or you have additional time. Many of you who have like me, have homeschooled, there's an abundance of online courses. MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Drexel, Duke, all of these universities have online classes. They're free. If a student is interested in learning about another language, or learning the history of a language, or learning robotics, or data analysis, or pretty much anything, the history of the Roman Empire. If there is something that you want to learn, there is an opportunity to do that. It's an opportunity to both shore up academic information for your classes, but more importantly, an opportunity for exploration. Again, I'm just not gonna, you can see all these things here, but the internet is a valuable resource. There are opportunities to visit art collections through museums. All of this is done virtually. And more specifically with respect to college visits, students cannot visit colleges in person right now, but that should not deter you from taking a tour, a virtual tour, whether it's through uvisit.com or campus tours. Some of the colleges' websites often have virtual tours directly on their website. I think this is a great time to learn a little bit more about what's a college looks like without being physically there. Books are always a great thing to do, community service. And again, as I mentioned, you can check on friends and family during this time. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. So if you saw my eyes sort of shifting, I was trying to answer some of the Q&A questions that were coming in. I apologize, I couldn't get to everyone. I will send more. Some of you guys, I responded by saying there's just too much here for me to respond in this little text box. Please send me your email address and I will get back to you. That was someone who asked about test optional schools. So the list, I can certainly get back to you with that. Or the person who asked about the website to NACAC, all of that I could definitely, or we can definitely email you after. So if you want, and we don't get to your question, please just reach out. I mean, we're doing the best we can. We don't want to keep you longer than 2 o'clock. So we're going to get through some of these that we have found to be the most popular questions, and then we will, and then we'll open ourselves up, you know, for future calls and future emails. So one question I got on here, I guess it was a result of Nicole's comment about the subject tests. So do I still recommend subject tests? So like everything, and I would respond to the box, this is too long to answer in the box, it totally depends, right? So more important than the subject tests for even the most competitive colleges are your SAT and your ACT, or is your SAT and ACT. So if you have not, or your child has not finished that, they should 100% focus on the SAT or the ACT. If your child has finished that, I always say that subject tests are kind of like the cherry on the sundae. They're nice, but not required. You know, everybody likes the rest, so it's okay. So if your child is done with the SAT and the ACT and they have the time, they can take the subject tests. As Nicole mentioned, MIT saying that they're not required is huge, right? And other schools will probably follow. However, if you look at the list, I think there were 2 left and now maybe 1 that actually require them anyway. So, you know, they're not really required. So it's going back to the SAT and the ACT. If your school happens to be the one that, you know, that you want to go to that's required, then, you know, try to get them in. But, you know, that's 1 out of 3,200 schools. So, you know, once again, not required. Another thing to keep in mind is what your child wants to study. So usually engineering programs are a little bit more subject test heavy than, you know, more the liberal arts. So if your child wanted to, let's say, engineering at Carnegie Mellon, you know, that would be more important to take subject tests than if your child wants to study history at SMU. The other thing to keep in mind is how far your child is along in the course. So I can tell you that, so if these classes are being truncated because of the virus, and your student is not getting to the end of biology or chemistry or world history, it's not really fair to expect them to then do well on a subject test that covers all of the material. So thus far, we know that the AP exams have been truncated through March 3rd. I think that's the date, well, through March. But I haven't heard anything that the subject test is being truncated. So there's a good chance that your child is not getting through the material, at least in time for the June or the May subject test. So this might be a good year to rethink that. Of course, if it's something like math and your child is far enough along, or literature or language or something, it's not the same as getting through a curriculum in world history or biology or US history. So it goes back to answer your original question, do I recommend subject tests? It depends, but I would not be hyper scared of subject tests. I would not be hyper worried if my child was not able to take subject tests. I would be hyper focused on doing the best your child can, and definitely focusing on the SAT and the ACT at the current time.
And I was just going to even add to what Mandee was saying, you know, the good thing with subject tests is that they're typically offered about 7 times a year. So if you miss this one, it's not like the AP exam. They're going to hopefully be other opportunities to take it later. I wanted to answer a question. Someone had a question about how to select a college without visiting. Again, if you are a senior, a lot of my seniors right now are in the process of making a decision about which of the many colleges they've been accepted to. A lot of colleges have canceled their admitted students day and other forms of outreach. So what I've done with them is to have them revisit what were, you know, why did they apply to that? Why did they apply in the beginning to that particular school? Just to remind them of what was important to them at the time of application. The next thing that I'm having them to do is to revisit the college's website to take a look at the department to which they applied, comparing departments to departments now. We're also recommending that students reach out, and this could be either by way of the college directly, or there are other places even on the internet where students are connecting, and having them talk to students who are there. And then of course that brings us to the financial piece. Right now, colleges have not, to my knowledge, made changes in the financial picture, but for many families, college, you know, if there's been a loss of income, for example, or a prospective loss of income, that might be something that you might be considering that you might not have considered at the time that you've applied. And then again, I would recommend visiting the colleges using those websites that we previously posted.
Awesome. All right, so while Nicole was speaking, I was looking through the list of questions, and one that keeps coming up is this question of test optional schools. So now that we're talking about all these testing changes, you know, what's the deal with test optional? I'm trying to get through. There's so many on test optional. I'm just trying to run through some of the questions. So thank you all. And once again, if I don't get to your particular one, just contact me. The list of the schools that are test optional can be found on a website called Fair Test. And I don't know if it's fairtest.org or fairtest.com, and I can't check right now. But if you send me your email address, I could send that out. But you can go there and see, like, and they're really good at updating it to what the test requirements are. Someone asked me, is if it says it's test optional, is it really test optional? And the answer to that is yes. I don't think colleges are in the business of lying to families. I mean, there's some belief out there that this process is just like horrible and fake. And honestly, I couldn't have this job if I believed that colleges were going out of their way to screw children. So if they say they're test optional, I do believe they're test optional. But what did they do if they're not looking at your child's test scores, which is what someone else asked. So Lee, thank you for that. They're really going to focus more on your child's grades, right? They're going to focus more on the child's essays. They're going to focus more on the child's letters of recommendation. So if your child, and I worked with the sweetest, most wonderful student this year. She had straight A's, brilliant kid, amazing extracurricular activities, just didn't do that well on standardized tests. She's going to GW. We didn't submit her test scores. She's really happy. She feels really good about herself. And actually, and if you think about it, she's at a school that values who she is, right? It's not a school that says we value standardized tests. We value kids that are more like this girl. So, so once again, you know, when they say they're test optional, I do believe they're test optional, and they're going to be looking at your child's grades, scores, not scores, grades, letters of recommendation, essays, and any other things that they get through the application. Let's see, what else have people been asking? And do I think more schools are going to be going test optional? I do. We've already seen a couple schools going at test optional during this time, and I think that they will. Just to answer Michelle's question before I turn over to Nicole for the next group of questions, SAT versus ACT, there is, from the college perspective, they take the SAT and they take the ACT. So it does not matter that the SAT is more popular in the North or the South and the ACT is more popular in the Midwest. The trick, right, if there is a trick, is to have your child try both, right? And whichever one they do well on is the one your child should do. Michelle, you mentioned your school in New York pushes the SAT. Okay, I'm not going to put down any of your counselors or anything, but no one should be pushing a particular test. They should be pushing the one that is best for your child. Once again, I've been doing this for 16 years. I have students, if they really were the same test, the student who does, you know, X on the SAT would do X on the ACT, and that's not how it always works. Plenty of examples where students do here on the SAT and here on the ACT, or here on the SAT and here on the ACT. So it would really stink if your child did not try them both. So try them both. Colleges do not care. We've had kids get into Stanford, Harvard, Yale, MIT, whatever top level school you want with both of them, and same with schools throughout the US. The grades have, it's called a concordance table. If you'd like me to send you your concordance table comparing the SAT or ACT, that's what the colleges use as far as comparing the two. But at the end of the day, nobody cares if they took the SAT or the ACT.
And thank you, Mandee. It was super helpful. And I think that holds true. I'm going to answer a question about the Florida Bright Futures for the some of the Florida families that we have online. The Florida Bright Futures requires a certain test on the SAT or the ACT. Again, it doesn't matter which test. You always want to take the test in which your child is going to perform the best. So if we're talking about college admission purposes, or if we're talking about this specific merit-based scholarship, the test in which your child is likely to be to score higher. Now, with the timing of the Florida Bright Futures, your child has until June the 30th to receive their highest test score. So even for students who are seniors now and who have perhaps taken the SAT or the ACT a couple of times and not received the test score that they would have liked to and wanted to take the test score again, yes, the law as it stands now and has for many, many years is that you have until June the 30th to receive your highest test score. So for any student who was concerned about missing the March or April or May exams, yes, the June SAT will count for Florida Bright Futures. And just as a sort of a follow-up for many who may not know, if you go to schools in Florida, the Florida Department of Education has indicated that public and private K through 12, as well as public and private colleges in the state of Florida, should be prepared to hold school through the end of June. So I think that's something to consider with family planning. It may be that if you've had, again, whether it's summer programs, we'll see there's going to be a lot of some changes. But again, be prepared. As of right now, the state of Florida is expecting schools to go through June 30th, which is 2 or 3 weeks later than usual.
And just to piggyback on changes, especially relating to Florida, Sharon sent me a question, or sent us a question about ACE, which is a pretty Florida thing, but it does relate to IB as well. Since the tests are being canceled, are students still going to get credit? So that's not an answer that Nicole and I can answer. However, going back to the fact that we don't think college admissions are evil people, nor do we feel that the people who run IB or ACE are evil people, I have to imagine that the kids will they'll find a way to a pathway to credit. Let's put it that way. I don't know what they're going to do, but I can't imagine kids have been taking AP their whole, or IB or ACE, you know, for all these years, and coming up to the test and they're canceling the test and the kids are screwed. So I would like to believe that there will be a pathway. I know that's not a great answer, but I firmly believe in it. And if you look at just what's going on, everyone is trying to be accommodating and not trying to be stinky. So let's assume for now, and we'll all, you know, be on top of that. So thank you for that question. I think it's an excellent one.
And again, since testing questions seem to be the most popular, the testing questions seem to be the most popular, we have another question. Do you think colleges that have dropped testing requirements will restate them next year? Right. Well, the first answer, the initial answer is, I don't know. But since I don't know for sure, but I can tell you what I think might happen. Roughly 1,000 of the 3,500 colleges are currently test optional. So I think there will be movement. I think that there will be more colleges who've made the decision to become test optional this year, who will continue to be test optional for the foreseeable future. However, many of the colleges that our families are applying to are not going test optional with respect to the ACT and the SAT. So again, the answer is, we don't know. The likelihood, though, is if a college has decided to go test optional, completely test optional, then certainly there's a chance that they will remain test optional.
And I just want to piggyback on that because of something that Kate asked us about whether dropping the subject test requirements, whether or not they're going to be put back. I agree with Nicole. I think the schools that have gone ACT, SAT optional might not go back too quickly. But the subject tests, once again, I have no crystal ball, I think could be put back, right? I think the schools that like subject tests as their cherries might go back to recommending them in the future. So since they're not required anyway, if I was MIT and I was Carnegie Mellon and I was Case Western and I wanted to find the best math and science kids, I might put them back. So that's a little bit different, but that is just my conjecture. So I could be wrong. I'm not a fan of standardized tests at all. So if it was up to me, I'd say bleh. But that is what it is. So moving on to another question. So Allison asked if AP exams will be administered online, will the results be available sooner? I don't know. But with technology, I remember taking my Series 7, I don't know if anyone out there took the Series 7, back in the 90s, and the answer came back immediately. So if you take it online, I don't see why they couldn't, especially if it's a 45-minute multiple choice test. So thinking through this, there used to be a 3-hour written exam where they had these readers that had to get together and read it. Now it's a 45-minute multiple choice test. So I would think that the answers would come back sooner. There'd be less, they don't need 2 people to review it. Either you got it right or wrong. But once again, we'll see how this actually plays out.
And I think what happens is, even if they came back sooner, because right now they typically come back in July. If they come back in June, honestly, colleges are still going to be so laser focused on, they've had to move students off campus. They're probably going, I guess I would say, if it comes back sooner or later, it's not going to impact your child's college decision, because honestly, they're not likely to even look at that information until your application is submitted, and we're talking October, November.
One question I want to answer, another one from Allison: how do I think all this will affect college admissions? We don't know. One thing I do think, and we've talked about this, is, and because we work with students in 13 countries, I do think it will impact the number of students from abroad who come to the US. I don't like that, because I do think the international students add a really exciting component to higher education here in the US. But without a doubt, I am fielding calls from my students from Spain. I actually, after this call, I have a call with a student in Switzerland. And the dad's like, I just don't think I want to send my 17-year-old to the US. You know, the changes in testing is too much for her. She's stressed out enough. She's on the IB curriculum, and now she has to do all these subject tests and all, you know, and her SAT and ACT got canceled, and she has to take the TOEFL. I mean, they have an added layer that I think most people on this call are Americans don't have. So, so I think there could be space for more American students in the class of 2021. I have seen, and Nicole has too, so in this admission cycle for class of 2020, there seems to be a heck of a lot of kids put on wait lists, which I think is a reflection of colleges not sure if the kids this year in class of 2020 are going to be coming to the US. So they're making this incredible wait list where I guess they can, you know, they haven't rejected kids and they have kids in the hopper. So, so that's my thought as far as overall admissions trends. Another thing, I read an article, so some of the schools are going to be having financial problems, right? Some of the smaller schools, and that might be something to look into before your child commits to a school. They were saying, so if a school had to send everyone home, then suddenly they're not getting money for housing, you know, they're not getting money for food, they're not getting money for, you know, they still have their expenses, let's put it that way, and they're not getting some of these auxiliary payments from the students. So they have made comment that some of the smaller schools might have a little bit of trouble financially. So just those are some things that we're seeing, but you know, once again, this is all conjecture.
And again, as you said, there's so much unknown, and I just wanted to clarify for students who are taking the AP exam in May. It is going to be a 45-minute test. It's going to be done at home. The College Board, who administers the AP test, says that a student can take it on their computer, they can take it on their phone or their iPad. It will be an essay-based test, and it's only going to include information up through what students would have typically learned through March. So students have the benefit, that's part of the reason why it's a shorter test. They're not expecting you to know all the material that you would have learned the entire year had you taken the course last year. But it's going to be what they're calling a free response test, which again is otherwise known as an essay exam.
Okay. It seems like one of us misspoke from the question. So the AP tests are multiple choice. They're not essays. They used to be essays. So I apologize, Debbie. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I said the APs all essays. I'm getting a lot of that. No, APs are multiple choice. They're not all essays. So I'm sorry about that. And then the ACT also is all multiple choice. There's a writing section at the end of the ACT that is not required by schools. But the ACT, as far as I know, has not changed its format. So I've been bombarded by questions. I'm sorry if I misspoke. But to recap, the AP exams are 45-minute multiple choice questions, whereas they used to be very essay heavy. They were 3 hours, very essay heavy. So now they're multiple choice, in which case you could get a faster response. ACT remains largely multiple choice. It remains to have a essay component to it, which most schools don't require. So nothing has changed. So multiple choice seems to be the winner of the day. So sorry about that if I said that wrong. Okay, let's see what other questions we're getting.
All right, then I was going to say the May 1st. And this specifically applies to high school seniors if you are considering where you want to go to college. Again, I would encourage you to check the website of your particular college. There are several colleges who have moved the decision date from May the 1st to June the 1st. However, I would say that the vast majority of colleges are still sticking with the May 1st deadline. This is an answer that can be fairly easily resolved with an email to the admissions office. Much like we are, many of the admission officers are working from home, have access to their computers, are still working, and so you can easily send, again, first check their website. If you don't see clear information, you can always send an email to the admission office, and they would be more than happy to give you up-to-date information.
Great. I'm going to answer a question that Kate sent because I love because it's different and no one's asked me that. So she asked about the gap year. Would I recommend a gap year for students because of all this uncertainty? I like gap year. I'm just going to throw it out. I like gap year. Many of you might know that Barack Obama's daughter did a gap year. There's no shame in doing gap years. I think the best reason to do a gap year is if your child needs a gap year, if your child thinks that they would develop or grow from a gap year. When I first started college counseling, I actually worked at a Jewish day school, a wonderful Jewish day school. A lot of the Orthodox Jewish children go abroad for a gap year. It's very common. I didn't have a single college that told the child they couldn't come after, getting a gap year in Israel or 2 gap years in Israel. So if your child, so I don't know if you necessarily need a gap year because of the uncertainties, because I think college will go on. There are millions of kids going to higher education. And I like to believe that we're going to get through this as a global community. But if your child is feeling uncertain, or your child is feeling anxious, or or you just think your child will benefit from a year of growth, then gap years are amazing.
A gap year. Another question that has just come up for juniors and taxes. While we don't typically get involved with the financial aid piece with the college admissions process, as a parent of college students, I am intimately familiar with paying for college. Again, I will say this: colleges are well aware of what is happening in the world, and so for juniors, there typically is an opportunity to if there are extenuating circumstances. And so last year, perhaps maybe you might not have applied for financial aid from a particular college. If there are significant changes, you can always reach out to the financial aid office, provide updated tax information, and they will always take a meeting with you. It will be up to the individual, it will be case specific whether or not there are any changes, but if there are changes to your financial situation, particularly significant financial changes, reach out to the colleges themselves, and they would be happy to address that issue.
Awesome. I just want to scroll back to Debbie asked a question about gap years. Just will a college hold your spot until the following year? So you have to ask the school before you take a gap year. So what the system is you apply, you get in, and then, well, sometimes some schools ask in advance, but then you can ask the school if they will hold your spot. But do not assume that the college will hold your spot. One new thing that some colleges are doing actually is they're including like a gap semester for freshmen who so choose. Northeastern has this a new in program, I think it's called. And in the first semester, the student can spend abroad and then start school. So that could be an interesting option for students considering some sort of gap experience. But so going back to Debbie, your question, do not assume that the college will hold your spot, but you can ask. But from my experience, I don't think I have ever seen a college not hold the spot. Once again, it doesn't mean there can't be a college that won't, or that there isn't a situation where it won't, but it's very common that they will be happy to have an older, more experienced child. Oh, okay. I was just going to answer Carolyn's question quickly about whether I thought the colleges will change early admissions deadlines and notifications to allow more time for testing. I think this is one of those, I don't know, but thankfully we have time. As of right now, your child, even if they apply early decision, can take the ACT or the SAT. Even if we talk about the fall, they could take it, they still have August, September, October. Some schools will even take early November. So do not worry right now. I mean, if this thing progresses into the fall, I think we all have other issues beyond deadlines for schools. But you do have time in the fall. And I also think, I believe, these are all conjectures, that the SAT and ACT will add more dates. They said they were. So as it is right now, you still have dates in June, July, August, September, October, various tests. So I'm not quite convinced that they would change the deadlines, just because I think everything is pretty stressed as it is.
Speaking of schools, a question came in. How many schools do we generally suggest that students apply to? And I'm going to give, it really does depend. And I'm going to give the answer if this were normal times versus abnormal times. But during normal times, we generally have students apply to up to about 10 schools. NACAC, again, the industry group, has done research and found that typically after 11 schools, there's a reduced likelihood of being admitted to all of your colleges, because it's just really very difficult to write why I love and why I most, this is why you're my most favorite college more than 10 times. And so during normal times, that's generally our recommendation, is to apply to about 10 colleges. Right now, with things in a little bit of turmoil, if you are a junior, let's say, and you're looking at your school list, I know that I've heard from some families that are looking, perhaps they might want to add a couple of more state schools on their list in a way that maybe they might not have done before, simply because in-state tuition typically is going to be less expensive than private school tuition. So that might be one consideration. I've heard from families that I work with that maybe they're looking for colleges that are closer to home. On the other end, one of my students this year was admitted to University of Washington as a pre-med student, and I strongly encourage that he take advantage of that opportunity to be sort of at the forefront. There's a lot happening right there. So if your child is interested in epidemiology or pre-med or economics, that might determine not only the number of colleges to which you are applying, but also that it might factor into why a college might go on your list now or weigh more heavily.
That was awesome, Nicole. And now I'm so excited. We have breaking news. So one of the questions was asked about the ACE curriculum, and I just got an email that said, it looks like students will get the ACE credit. And here's a quote from ACE. "We understand and recognize that schools and students have worked hard to prepare for these exams, and we will recognize that effort. With that in mind, students' mastery of their course of study and all the work put in this year will be awarded accordingly. Students will receive a grade as if they had sat for the exam. All certificates from Cambridge International, including the Cambridge ACE diploma, will be awarded to qualified candidates." So that's awesome. But I think it speaks to exactly what we've been saying. Everyone's going to try to accommodate. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to try to take away your Bright Future Scholarship or your ACE diploma, or because the entire world is on lockdown. So, thumbs up for ACE for doing that. I'm gonna guess that IB is gonna follow suit, but once again, I don't really know. All right, it's 1:54. We'll do one more question, and then please email us your additional questions. We'd love to hear from you. I know we didn't get to all of the questions, but we tried. Oh, here, I got one from Panama, question. "What summer classes, activities, and camps do you recommend for a rising ninth grader?" So that's a broad question. I'm not sure. So so once again, I don't have a crystal ball. I am of the belief that things will go on for the summer. So I am still telling students that if you're interested in a summer program, do not take away your deposit yet. you know, that these things will go on. I don't have any reason to believe otherwise. So for a rising ninth grader, whatever your child was going to do before, I would say, you know, proceed ahead. And what I like, just thinking big picture college admissions, so your kid's a rising ninth grader. Let them choose, because authenticity is key to this process. And if your child chooses music, then that's awesome, because that tells you something for the future, and they're not trying to fake it for college. If your child chooses art, amazing. If your child chooses a sport, and quite frankly, if your child chooses like a day camp too, they're only rising ninth graders, I think that's good as well. The trick to all this is to be, once again, going back to authenticity and not having a high school experience that's just filled with only college. I think would make happier and more productive and actually more successful children. So so thank you so much for the family in Panama. If you want any particular, I guess, camp suggestions, tell me a little about your child, right? It goes back to every child being different, and you can email me directly. And if you say my child likes the oboe, I can send you some, or my child likes math, or something like that. So so that's it, 156. Thank you again, from Nicole and me at International College Counselors. We welcome any future emails, and I think we'll have more of these webinars, because we capped at 100 and we had 100 people and we couldn't add any more. Have a great day, everyone, and take care. Stay safe. I need